Right now, somewhere in your kitchen cupboard, there's a small spice that dentists have trusted for over a century that keeps showing up in skincare ingredient lists, on the toothpaste cover, and that hair researchers have started studying for a very specific reason involving the hormone behind hair thinning. Today, we're doing something different. We're putting one whole clove under your tongue for 6 minutes. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what's happening in your mouth, your bloodstream, your skin, and your scalp while it sits there, and why the placement matters just as much as the clove itself. Here's what to do. Take one whole clove, not ground, not oil, just one dried clove bud, and tuck it under your tongue. Set a timer for 6 minutes. You'll feel it soften. You'll notice a warm, slightly numbing tingle. And somewhere around minute 2 or 3, you'll get a strong burst of flavor as the outer layer starts to break down. So why not just chew it and swallow it like everyone else does? Here's the part most people do not know. The floor of your mouth, right under your tongue, sits on top of one of the most blood vessel dense pieces of tissue in your entire body. It's called the sublingual region, and it's so efficient at absorbing certain compounds directly into your bloodstream that emergency medicine uses it on purpose. When someone is having a heart attack, paramedics don't hand them a pill to swallow. They put nitroglycerin under the tongue because swallowing would send it through the stomach and the liver, a whole filtering system that would slow it down and break part of it apart before it ever reached the heart. Under the tongue, it's absorbed within minutes. A clove isn't medication, and it won't work anywhere near that fast, but the same shortcut applies. Held under your tongue, cloves' natural oils start releasing into that vessel-rich tissue and your saliva before your digestive system ever gets involved. So what's actually in the clove that makes this worth 6 minutes of your time? One compound, eugenol. It makes up roughly 70 to 90% of clove oil, and it's the reason your dentist has probably touched something clove-scented during a filling. But eugenol's reputation for numbing pain is honestly the least interesting thing about it. Here's a number that tends to surprise people. Gram for gram, cloves rank among the highest of any food on lab measures of antioxidant capacity. High enough that half a teaspoon of ground clove has been reported to carry more antioxidant activity than half a cup of blueberries, the fruit that gets put on a pedestal in every superfood list you've ever scrolled past. And clove has been sitting quietly in the spice rack the whole time. Let's start with skin, because this is where it gets interesting for anyone who's ever looked in the mirror and wondered why their skin looks tired, even after a full night's sleep. A huge amount of visible skin aging, the dullness, the fine lines, the loss of bounce, comes down to something called oxidative stress. Free radicals, unstable molecules generated by sun exposure, pollution, and ordinary metabolism damage collagen and elastin, the two proteins that keep skin firm and springy. Antioxidants are the cleanup crew. They neutralize free radicals before that damage happens. This is exactly the category eugenol falls into. Researchers testing clove oil directly on human skin cells in a lab found it reduced several of the inflammatory signals involved in skin irritation and supported the cell's natural repair activity. I want to be precise here. That's a lab study on cells, not a clinical trial on faces, but it tells you the mechanism is real, not just marketing language. Then there's a mineral almost nobody mentions in a skincare context, manganese. 1 teaspoon of ground cloves supplies more than half your daily requirement of it. And manganese isn't a bystander. It's a required cofactor for 2 things your skin depends on. One is superoxide dismutase, an antioxidant enzyme your own body manufactures to fight oxidative stress from the inside. The other is involved in building the collagen scaffolding itself. Think of collagen as the framework of a building under construction. Manganese is part of the crew that has to show up for that framework to actually get built correctly. None of this makes eating cloves a substitute for sunscreen or a real skincare routine. It isn't. And nothing in a spice jar replaces that. but it's a genuinely interesting example of a compound supporting skin health from the inside, not just the outside. Now, here's where I think most of you will lean in a little closer, because we haven't even gotten to hair yet. Healthy hair growth depends heavily on blood flow to the scalp. Your follicles are living tissue, and living tissue needs oxygen and nutrients delivered on a steady schedule. Eugenol has mild circulation boosting properties, which is one reason it turns up in scalp treatments at all. But the finding that actually made researchers pay closer attention involves a hormone pathway. Pattern hair loss in both men and women is driven largely by an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase, which converts testosterone into a more potent hormone, DHT, that gradually shrinks hair follicles over time. Early laboratory research has found that eugenol may partially block that same enzyme. That's early stage cell and animal level evidence, not a replacement for proven treatments like minoxidil. But it's exactly the kind of biological lead that keeps hair scientists interested in this spice. There's a third piece. A healthy scalp is a controlled environment, and problems like dandruff and itchiness often trace back to certain bacteria and fungi overgrowing on the skin's surface. In one small lab study using real scalp samples, clove extract slowed the growth of both a common scalp bacteria and a common scalp fungus. Add in eugenol's antioxidant protection for the follicle itself, shielding it from the same free radical damage we just talked about with skin, and you start to see why clove keeps resurfacing in scalp research, even though it's nowhere near as famous as biotin or rosemary oil. The benefits don't stop at your hairline, though. Back in your mouth, holding that clove stimulates saliva production, and saliva does far more than keep your mouth from feeling dry. It buffers acid, washes away bacteria, protects enamel, and contains enzymes that kick off digestion before food even reaches your stomach. Eugenol has documented anti-inflammatory activity, too. In one animal study on inflammatory joint disease, it measurably lowered several inflammatory markers in the joints. And in early research on blood sugar, animals given clove showed lower blood glucose than those that didn't. These are preliminary animal-level findings, not proof that clove treats arthritis or diabetes in people, but they explain why researchers keep circling back to this one spice from so many different angles. There's one more finding worth knowing, mostly for safety reasons. Eugenol has been shown to reduce platelet clumping, which is part of how blood clots form. That's genuinely interesting science. But if you're on a blood thinner, it's also a reason to mention clove to your doctor before making it a daily habit, rather than just trying it quietly on your own. Which brings me to the rule that matters more than anything else in this video: one whole clove. Not clove oil, not a handful, not a habit you build up over time thinking more is better. Whole cloves used this way are genuinely low risk for most healthy adults. Concentrated clove oil is a completely different story. It's roughly 70 to 90% pure eugenol, and case reports in medical literature describe children developing seizures, liver failure, and dangerous drops in blood sugar after swallowing amounts as small as 1 or 2 teaspoons of clove oil. That's not a reason to fear the spice sitting in your cupboard. It's a reason to respect it. One whole clove held under the tongue is a completely different exposure than a spoonful of concentrated oil, and the two should never be confused. So here's my challenge. Grab one clove, just one, and hold it under your tongue for 6 minutes while you're reading, scrolling, or just sitting still. Notice the tingle. Notice the saliva. And now that you know what's actually happening underneath that sensation, in your bloodstream, in your skin, at the root of your hair follicles, I'd genuinely like to know, which one of these surprised you most? Tell me in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.